This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
We are on live here. Thumbs up. So welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I hope all of you enjoyed your extra hour of sleep. I didn't, because I have dogs, and as you know, they don't care about a clock. Their internal clock says, hey, it's time. So instead of getting me up at 5:30, they got me up. Really, in their time, it was 4:30. So yeah, it was crazy. Anyway, it was they're happy to go out. And anyway, I was happy to try to fall back asleep. It didn't work. So anyway, hope all is well. One thing I want to get started, and this is getting a lot of press online everywhere, and I'm just curious about everyone's thoughts. I'm incensed, to say the least, about poor Peanut and Fred. That is the squirrel, the Longo squirrel and raccoon, that they rehabilitated. They took them in, they treated them as not only pets, but family. I'm sure you can see on the internet all the things that this unbelievable squirrel was taught to do, and it was unbelievable. What bothers me is the state of New York. Maybe they were mad because the Yankees lost. I don't know. But anyway, the truth of the matter is, it's a State Department, right, of, environmental conservation. Now, when you think of the word to conservation, doesn't it imply saving? When you conserve energy, you save energy. When you conserve anything, you're preventing it from degrading. And what really is amazing is that to use the excuse that, well, they were illegal and they are wild animals. They're worried about rabies. Really? Rabies? They've had little guy for 7 years. Do you realize when a dog is found biting someone, a stray dog, and they're worried about maybe did it have rabies? Who knows? It bit somebody. We don't know anything about it. So what's interesting is, do you know how long we have to quarantine that dog? 10 days. 10 days. And all of a sudden, these animals have been there for years and certainly did not have rabies. It would be dead by now. And it's a bunch of BS. And it just blows my mind. And what even bothers me more is that the employees, the people that came out, don't you think if you're working with an agency that is supposed to conserve animals, wildlife, environment, don't you think that they would have a heart? Don't you think that that would be their motive also? So to coldly put these animals to sleep, it's a mind blow. And yet they got away with it. I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't know from a legal aspect. I know that, they always say you can't sue, Uncle Sam, you can't sue the government, but I don't know, maybe there should be some consequence. I mean, this is unbelievable the way they did it and to use the excuse they're worried about rabies, and one of this little guy, Peter, bit one of the guys. So then hold them for 10 days. But it already proved they tried to release the squirrel and it came back with a broken tail or a damaged tail. So clearly there was something going on out there with this poor squirrel. So they took it in. They have horses. They have all of other sorts of animals there. Are they going to start coming in and putting all those to sleep also? For what? To try to be conserved, to try to rehabilitate them? It makes zero sense. And it's just, as I said, it's very, very frustrating about it. Tell me, am I wrong? What do you think? I mean, you can chime in. I would love to hear your opinions. If I'm missing something, then I'd like to hear it, but I don't know. Anyway, so how was everybody's week? Have any questions about pets? Now's the time to do it. We'll do our best to keep them alive and not to like destroy them. So I got JB agreeing and LAT is I got some agreements. I just like to see what you guys think. So one of the things I wanted to talk about last week, and I'm New York Yankee. What do you think of your wonderful state of New York? Do you think they overreacted? Do you think they misreacted? They should not have done that. I mean, even if, let's say this guy was doing it illegal. Let's say he didn't keep his license. Okay, all right. So you fine him. But look what he's doing. Look at all the good he's doing. Look at these animals that otherwise would not be alive. So it wasn't like he was just haphazardly. They weren't tortured. Do you see what's going on the internet? Did that squirrel look like it was unhappy? Did that squirrel look like it was being tortured? I mean, this thing he's got so much cute stuff. I mean, I'm amazed. I took a video this morning of one of my squirrels. You know, a lot of squirrels in my neighborhood, right? And we also feed the birds. We have bird feeders up. We have hummingbird feeders. We have seed feeders for the birds. But our very, very, very smart squirrels were figuring out how to climb this post and get to the bird seed, and they love it, which is great. So we bought one of these. It's like a canopy. It's a plastic awning that goes over it. So apparently they can't get around it. Well, not so fast. I have video this morning of a squirrel jumping on the top of it and realizing that it's being tethered just by a hook. So that means that it rocks this way, and he steps on it this way, pushes it down, and then he leaps onto the long bird feed canister, and he's eating all the bird seed. And they're smart little guys. And when I did my master's research, was on squirrels, on the California ground squirrals, Spermophilus beechii, and I get to observe them. And I was watching them, and I was looking at their social, like their hierarchies, and the males and their females, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Their vocalizations, different vocalizations to warn other squirrels about predators, especially big birds, air predators, and yet people, we're judging that they're dangerous. It's unbelievable. It makes no sense. So it is. It's inhumane behavior, and it really bothers me that it's a state agency. I remember this. I remember a lot of people years ago having a discussion about people working these shelters. These kill shelters, have to put animals to sleep. And they said, how can they do this? These people don't care. And I went in and saw a video of one of the workers, one of the employees and they don't make a lot of money. And these shelters, these kill shelters, and in talking about what they have to do and why and how, it was, I mean, literally tears to her eyes. She was so choked up. They hate doing it. They hate putting them to sleep. But sometimes they have to, and they have their rules and regulations and space. If there's space, then they won't. They will keep them as long as they can, and they will keep the ones that are more adoptable as long as they can, especially because they really feel those are the ones that have at least a fighting chance. But it's the problem is not them, it's us. It's the pet parents. It's the people that are not spaying and neutering. It's the people that are letting their dogs run amok or having these cats. There's so much more to it that we can help prevent. And they're look, they even run out of fosters. So you have people that are foster a dog. And, fortunately, we see a lot of what we call foster failures. They foster temporarily, and then they end up adopting, which is exactly what we want. And I have clients that are fostering 3, 4, 5 dogs at a time. So they want, but ultimately, if these rescue groups or shelters are running out of space, and then they're running out of fosters because the fosters already have multiple pets. So what do? You can't force a person off the street to house a pet that they either have their own pets or just aren't interested. So, I mean, it's a problem. But don't think for a minute that these people are just blindly putting them to sleep and they don't give a damn. They give a big damn, and it kills them sometimes to have to do it, but they have to do it. All right, let me just wave here. So I know you guys are being very awfully quiet today. I need to let me hear what your thoughts are. Let me hear. You must have some questions. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of, and I don't know why, it's hello, Victoria. They come, and it seems like they're coming in groups, and we'll see certain diseases sometimes, like you say, third time is a charm. These bad things happen in threes. Well, I've been seeing cases that it's more than 3, more than 6, more than 9, and that is seizures. I'm getting a lot of seizing dogs, and it's kind of crazy. And I'm going through this discussion I have with the pet parents many times is what do we do? First of all, how do we worry? How do we determine whether a seize is something super serious or maybe not so serious? And again, this is what we need to do. So see you, by the way, how are you? So what we have to think about is, first of all, and this is how I approach them, and this is my thing. and others may approach it differently. But having had a child, my oldest, Rana, who's now 41, seized. And the first thing when she sees as an 8-year-old, the doctor said, well, look, sometimes these things can happen randomly for no apparent reason. And if it's one, and when she's not seizing, everything is perfect, we don't worry. We watch and see, is there going to be a second one? And unfortunately, in her case, she was not totally normal when she wasn't seizing. And that led to a whole bunch of stuff. Fortunately, she's obviously doing great right now. And she didn't need any surgery. It was kind of a weird, turned out to be parasite in her brain, which go figure. But anyway, so first thing I always do is when we have a seizing dog that's relatively young, my son's adopted golden retriever, he adopted knowing it was brought into the rescue because he started to seize and a lot. I mean, we're talking a lot of seizures and violent seizures. And the young family who had him couldn't handle it, all the meds and stuff like that. So Brandon, our CEO at AirVet, doing an amazing job. He adopted in this dog. His name is Wheezy. He is, first of all, he's stunning and he's so gorgeous. He's so sweet. They have 3 boys and the dog is as gentle as can be, but the seizures are more under control, but they still happen. So the first thing I do, if it's a young dog, seizes out of the blue one time and is fine after the seizure, what do I do for it? Nada. Now, if in the history, he may have gotten a hold of something that we know, because I would take a blood test. But sometimes for the first time, I don't even do a blood test. I examine. If everything is fine, we wait and see. If there's no more seizures, then we're good. Now, if there is another seizure, how long? So if there's a second seizure, if it's a month or 2 later or less than that, of course, we're going to do lab work. And if the lab work is all normal and he's behaving totally normally after the seizure, then we probably would start him on medication. Let's say the next seizure is 3 or 4 months later. We take a blood test, we check him out, and he's totally fine after the seizure, but I may not start him on meds. Why? Because if we have a dog, and this is my thought at this point, we're dealing with epilepsy. If we have an epileptic dog and without meds, they're coming 3 or 4 times a year, well, that's the best we're going to get, even on meds. So leave them alone. Why drug them? Why put them all these meds? Just let them be, as long as they are still 3 to 4 or more months apart. If they start happening more frequently, then yes, we're going to do meds. Now, what happens when an older dog seizes? And I'm talking 9, 10 years old, or even 7 or 8 years old, out of the blue, has been fine his whole life. Now I'm thinking, this may be something more. Because when dogs get epilepsy, it's usually young middle age, early middle age. Doesn't usually, again, I got to use that word usually, start later in life. So now my thinking is there may be something going on in the brain. But usually these dogs also aren't 100% normal when they're not seizing. Something is off. Sometimes you can't even pinpoint, but they're not the same. They're maybe sometimes seem spacey. Their just behavior is off. They may be a little more depressed. They're not eating. So there's often something else going on. These are the ones now I'm concerned about, something neurologically, something in the brain, spinal cord, something else is causing these seizures. And now we're going to look at maybe some other tests, not just a blood test, because that can be normal, but maybe a CT, maybe an MRI, looking for something else. And then obviously, depending on those results, treating accordingly. So, the most important thing when it comes to these seizing dogs is that we don't ignore it. Don't ignore the first seizure. Certainly contact your veterinarian. And if it's a young dog, everything else is normal, maybe just fine. We just got to wait and see. But it's something you need to know. B, how you doing? Happy birthday again. My sister Bethany there. I'm not going to give her age, but it was November 1st. And one of my best friends from high school, now a big cardiologist, Dr. David Marin, also November 1st. So, all right, now, still waving. So, if you have any questions about seizing and what meds, there's another thing. So when I graduated vet school just a few years ago, like 40, it's crazy when I think about it, doing this for over 40 years. But anyway, when I graduated, the drug of choice was phenobarbital. And now since then, there are some other anti-seizure medications that are very effective. The big one is Keppra levetiracetam. Say that 10 times fast. So there's no problem with it. It's good. But when I've had cases, I have to sometimes, we can use Keppra, we can use phenobarb. Sometimes we got to use them both. And when I was talking to one of my very good friends and colleagues, happened to be, he was finishing up his residency in neurology at Davis when I was there. He then became faculty at, I think it was Colorado State. And now he's back at Davis. Now he's a professor emeritus. And we've kept in touch for years. He's a gem. Anyway, whenever I have a really tough question, I will talk to him. And another thing speaking of him, his name is Dr. Rick Lacuter. But Rick says, despite it all and all these new medications, his favorite is still phenobarbital. And what he says is the effect of what worries us about phenobarb is that it does have a sedative effect. But he says, when you have to get higher doses, it can, but also that it will, they outgrow that effect. So they tolerate it better and they adapt to it. So now it just has the anti-seizure effect and not so much the sedative effect. Anyway, I have a couple more questions. Don't go away. We'll be back after these short messages from our sponsors here at Pet Life Radio and Instagram Live. Hang in there because we'll talk during the commercial break.
You know the expression, cats have 9 lives. Well, what if you can give them one more? The Give Them 10 movement is on a mission to help give cats an extra life. How? With spay and neuter. Spaying or neutering your cat helps them live a longer, healthier life. And it helps control free-roaming cat populations too. Learn more about the benefits of spay and neuter and meet Scooter, the neutered cat, at GiveThem10.org. That's GiveThem10.org.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life
PetLifeRadio.com.
Radio.
So we're back. We're just talking about a 12-year-old Yorkie female that was put on blood pressure medication. A while back, she said he had a heart murmur. And what are my thoughts about blood pressure and heart medication? So it does, first of all, you can have a lot of dogs with heart disease and don't have elevated blood pressure. So you don't start an animal on blood pressure medication until you have proof that they have elevated blood pressure. So you need to do your blood pressure evaluation. And there are a number of ways to do it. You have these new machines. They can do it like itself. You have the good old-fashioned Doppler, where your old medical doctor would do, and they put the cuff here on your arm, and they're listening, and they hear the blood start when it starts pumping. They look at the reading on the meter and tells you kind of where you're at. Now, again, there's some devices that can do it automatically, which is great. But would I start a dog on blood pressure medication without confirmation that he's elevated blood pressure? Absolutely not. So now let's talk about the parameters. What we do to evaluate, is a murmur by itself reason to even start heart medication? And the answer is not, in my opinion. In my opinion, we have so many great tools available to us, and we have many, many veterinary cardiologists. You can still do EKG and X-ray. That'll give you an idea. If the heart murmur is loud, the heart's enlarged, and you do an EKG and it shows signs that we have enlarged ventricle and abnormal beats, whatever. Yes, and you have no access to echocardiography, no heart cardiologist, veterinary cardiologist in your area, then yes, I would start something, maybe some Pimobendan to start, maybe an Alapril to start, Lasix if everything is good with the kidneys. But you're good. That's how we used to do it. And sometimes we still have to. But if you have access to echocardiography, that is the way to really make decisions, because that is not only looking at the ventricles, it's not looking at the atrium, it's not looking at the valves themselves, it's not just looking at the wall thickness, it's looking at the beating of the heart, the blood pressure, the backflow through a leaky valve, the pressure leaving, coming into the pulmonary, going into the pulmonary artery, into the right side of the heart, leaving the vena cava. So these are all the things that we need to see, and in order to make a judgment call. So that's my recommendation: is don't start the heart blood pressure medication for sure until you have confirmation that the dog has elevated blood pressure. I hope that answers your question. And let me see what else came. Can stress cause Cat Snippers, Jackie Nelson. Okay. I'm waving. So anyway, any other questions about seizures before we move on? Because that's very important because, as I said, I'm seeing so many. One thing I wanted to add about the seizure discussion is that that when we used to, you have these medications, and there's some good ones, and there's another one out there called KBR. It's not even a medication; it's a salt, potassium bromide. And what I find, I don't like to use it by itself. I don't think it's that effective by itself. However, as an add-on to phenobarbital, it seems to enhance the anti-seizure activity of phenobarb without enhancing the sedative effect of phenobarbital. So I think that's a great add. Instead of just first raising the level of phenobarb to attain the desired result, I will add KBR first, potassium bromide, because that might do the trick. That might be enough to keep everything going just fine. So that's something to think about. And you could show of hands, send me a text. Those of you who have had pets that seized or have a seizing problem, it would be great to know. Now, one thing I will tell you that I found interesting, and again, mentioning Dr. Lakuter, that I had a case years and years ago, very early in my career, of a little Papillon was going through these phases every couple of weeks of just shivering and shaking, almost like little small breeds get nervous or get cold and they shiver. And it was coming on with such regularity. I just said, I called Rick because I thought maybe it was some neurologic deficit. So I get him on the phone. We're talking about it. I tell him, he goes, well, it sounds like a petit mal seizure. I go, petit mal seizure? Rick, you taught us that dogs only get grand mal seizures, which is a real tonic-clonic convulsive seizure, right? He goes, well, I taught you wrong. So that's a good guy. He admits it. So enough research had been done since these early days, and it turns out that dogs can also get petit mal seizures. Those are some weird, it's not a full-blown seizure. It's just a weird shivering, shaking behavior, an episode, some twitch, something that if it happens with regularity, it very well could be a form of a seizure. You need to consult with your doctor, your veterinarian, because these may be a perfect case for something more mild, like a little phenobarb, like Keppra. So anyway, these are the things that you should just keep in mind. All right, I got that one. And by the way, Kaylin Hubbard, what was the pressure medication? Was it amlodipine? Do you know the name of the pressure medication that they started? I'm just curious. So maybe they did take a blood pressure. In which case, if it was high, then yes, absolutely justified. But I wouldn't start a dog on blood pressure medication just because they have a murmur. I wouldn't say they're completely separate, but let's put it this way. Most of the dogs we're treating for heart disease, even dogs that had echocardiography, they did it the right way. They're on medication. They don't have high blood pressure. So keep that in mind. Cats may be a little different, but dogs. So, okay. Big floppy dog ears. Oh, there are certain foods that cause yeast infections in their ears. Big yeast infections in the ears, first of all, are more common than bacterial. In the perfect ear, you have a balance between the bacteria and the yeast, and they kind of keep themselves in check. And when that balance is disrupted, then you can get these infections. Typically, it disrupts in where the advantage is on the yeast. The body does a better job in controlling its own bacteria than it does its own yeast. So therefore, when they have both, and the body is combating some of the bacteria, then the yeast now have much less competition, and they seem to thrive. So I definitely see more yeast infections in dogs than bacterial infections, but we, of course, can see both. So when you think of yeast infections also, and again, I've never done a study myself to prove this, but again, logically, when you have a long, heavy, floppy-eared dog, okay, let's say a Basset Hound or any of these dogs. So what contributes to yeast overgrowth? Well, first of all, it's moisture. Secondly, it's darkness. And thirdly, less oxygen. That's a perfect environment for yeast. So Now we look at these dogs with the heavy floppy ears. Well, can they get moist? Of course they can. Is it dark? You betcha. Is there less airflow going in? Of course, you got that heavy ear flap covering the ear. No wonder why they're getting more yeast infections. So no, it does seem to be helping. Now, her worst reading was 217 over 95. That's high. And but benazepril is a good heart medication, not specifically for blood pressure, but it will reduce the blood pressure. So with readings that high on pressure, then I could see that. But maybe more specific blood pressure medication. But I don't know where you're calling from, but if there is a veterinary cardiologist within 50, 75, even 100 miles, it might be worth, at least to start, getting an echocardiogram. And also, how old is this dog? You may have mentioned it. Let me know how old this dog is. I'm Mama Sue. That was worse. So it could be that this is, so that very well could be that the benazepril will help, and maybe should be on either benazepril or enalapril. That does sort of open up the vessels, allows for decrease of blood pressure as that blood is leaving the heart. It does make the blood flow more easily. Think of it this way. Think of having two straws, and you're trying to blow through a straw. One straw has a diameter about like this, and the other one has a diameter like this. Which one is going to give you less resistance? The one or this one? All right. Same thing. That's what some of these meds do. They kind of open up the vessels as they leave the heart, allowing for easier blood flow and thus decreased pressure and decreased work on the heart muscles, on the ventricles that are pumping the blood through. So these medications seem to help. I think we have answered everybody. So I have a busy day in front of me, and I am going to say goodbye. During the week, you hear this every week from me. If you have any questions, anything you want to speak about, anything that is pressing, if it's really pressing, just contact me on Instagram, on my email, on my website, whatever, and we'll get to you and answer your question. If it's something that you think others would benefit, it's not urgent where you need an answer today, please, please, please. I know I sound like what's her name? Sabrina Carpenter. Please, please, please. But I want you to get a hold of me, and maybe next week on the show, share it with everybody. And everybody learns that way. Everybody learns, everybody benefits. And it gives me some things to talk about. Not that I've ever lots of things to talk about, but it'll help. All right. Anyway, so wonderful week, everybody. And those of you that are not New York Yankee fans, but are Dodger fans like me, that last game was really something. Thank you, of course, to some of the Yankee mistakes, but those Dodgers, they put it together, and that was a pretty gutsy move to put in a starting pitcher who just pitched 2 days before to come in and close the game. That was amazing. So yes, New York Yankee, I'm sure you're upset, but you know what? I got to remind you, because I remember 1978. Like it was yesterday. It was Yankees, Dodgers. Okay. The first 2 games, it was again, Dodger had a better record. So it was 2 in LA, 3 in New York, and then 2 back in LA. And the first 2 games, Dodgers won. It was 2-0 going to New York. New York not only won all 3 of their local games in New York, back in LA, they won the first one. They won the series 4-2. So I get very nervous when the Dodgers play the Yankees, because they've already proven that they can do what many teams have not been able to do, and that is win 4 straight. So anyway, so I was pretty happy that the Dodgers won this one, but we'll see. And also, I think, for those naysayers that tell the COVID year when there was a shortened season and the Dodgers won, they blamed it on, the Dodgers proved that they're not so bad after all. Anyway, great week, everybody. Once again, happy birthday to my sis. And we will see you all here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, here on Pet Life Radio, here on Instagram. And we're looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.